respond to some of the points made. So you can take it there, or you can come up on the podium. Then we can open it up for questions.
Thank you very much for this very insightful comments. I completely agree with many of the things that you have said. And so just for the sake of time, we just respond to some of the issues you raised. First of all, Mr. Vaibhav, I agree with you that institutional distortion is the most important distortion in the system. That's one of the findings of our report. Institutional distortions is more important than regulated distortions. That is why we recommend that only focusing on liberalizing price is not enough, because there are bigger institutional distortions, and that have contributed to inefficiencies, high cost. So we need to address institutional distortions as a priority. Responding to Dr. Mathur, yeah. So your first point is privatization. I completely agree that privatization alone is not enough, because when there's no incentive for being more efficient, if the cost are passed on to consumers through rate of return regulation, then both private and public power plants and players are not going to be efficient. So we need to provide the proper incentive, either through competition or incentive-based regulation that links financial returns to these power plants with their performance measured either by both by efficiency and quality, and that is when the both public and private power plants can improve their efficiency. So it is important to have a market play a bigger role to reward efficiency. That's the recommendation we make in the report. We do point out that the private power plants are more efficient than state government-owned power plants when we look at their co-intensity. And the reasons we point out that is the state government-owned power plants, they lack of a more strong profit motive, and also there's less transparency and accountability. But the bigger point is that when we provide incentive to the power plants, then both private and public power plants will become more efficient. And that is what we have seen in other parts of the world, like in the United States. When the regulator deregulated half of the country, we see that private investors, private power producers also become more efficient in the order of 5 to 20% measured by their fuel efficiency. So your second point about affordability, I also completely agree that it is very important to make sure poor households have access to electricity at affordable price. And in this report, we recommend several ways to achieve this. The one is that through institutional reform, improving the efficiency of coal supply, improve the efficiency of power generation, reducing the losses of distribution, and all of this will contribute to reducing the cost of electricity generation, and that will help relieve the upward pressure on electricity prices. So one thing that can be done is to rapidly increase the efficiency of supply. A second thing is to rapidly also increase the efficiency of end use. One example is the UJJ scheme that have distributed 370 million energy efficient bulbs to consumers. And that is an example of how to provide the long-term support to energy affordability through energy conservation. The third way that we want to, the report recommend to help improve the affordability is through targeted social assistance. Again, we mentioned in the report that the direct benefit transfer scheme is a better way to protect consumers and at the same time not introducing distortions to the system. because it is never a good idea to introduce one distortion in order to address another distortion. And your point on we have to look at the multi-factor issues that affecting power plants efficiency, that I also completely agree. In this report, we pointed out that there are many things that could affect the efficiency of power plants, including their size. The larger a power plant, the more efficient it would be. The age, younger a power plant, the more efficient they tend to be. And also the technology. Actual technology is the most important explanatory factor for explaining the efficiency. And also the quality of coal and where they locate, because the climate could affect how efficient a power plant is. And we have controlled all these external factors, but we still find a substantial efficiency gap between state government-owned power plants and the private power plants. So that suggests that there is some innate difference between these two types of plants that has contributed to the efficiency gap. It could be the differences in their quality of a managerial performance. So by improving the managerial performance of state government power plants, we could effectively improve electricity supply in a very cost-effective way without even investing on any new generation capacity. And that is one of the findings of the report, that just by closing that efficiency gap, by improving the managerial performance, we can reduce power shortage in the northern region of India by 46%. And I also agree with your point about outages. Yes, although we see that in the official estimate that the power shortages have significantly reduced, but that estimation does not take into account this latent demand by millions of underserved and unserved households. And that's why this also relates to the first point. The next panelist mentioned that what is the goal of the reform? Have we already achieved universal access and reliable power supply? I would say we have not achieved that goal, because people that are connected to the electricity, they have not received adequate level of service. And even though power shortage has been reduced, but there are still, but the definition of power shortages does not take into account the latent demand of many unserved and underserved population. So the grid efforts that connected millions of households to the grid is only the first step. When there's a wire connecting the grid to the village, the following step is to also make sure that there's a wire connecting a household to the electric pole in the village. And the third step is to make sure that there are affordable and reliable electrons flowing through those wires. And those are the things that the second and third steps are the things that we need to address by power sector reforms. I also completely agree with your point on market design, but I think that India is already ahead than many of the other South Asian countries in developing a free market. For example, I think it's only one country in South Asia that has a competitive wholesale market. But the actions that need to make in the future is make sure that the market is playing a bigger role in deciding the cost, deciding the price, and that will help further improve the efficiency of the system.
Thank you, Professor Fan. So I open up the floor for questions. So if you have questions for Professor Fan or for the panelists, please state your name and then ask the question to whom it's directed.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Sanjeev. I work for the Observer Research Foundation. As the report says, about 4% of our GDP is lost because of the various economic costs involved. And half of this, it seems, comes from the fact that we are consuming more coal than we can at the same level of electricity production, right? Now, my question, Dr. Pham, is that the bank always assumes an open economy model. After Donald Trump came into politics, and for us, 3 years before, Indonesia, for example, shut off supply at the agreed price by imposing a tax on 3 mega coal power plants, and they're lying virtually idle even today. So I think we can no longer assume an open economy when we do this modeling. We have to assume a much more constricted world economy, which means you have to factor in the benefits of energy security, right? The security that comes from using your own resources, even though you may be doing it inefficiently for political factors. On the institutional side, similarly, we have inefficiencies that you pointed out, that the loss is too much. Actually, it's not really a loss, it's theft. So some of that is recycling back. I mean, if I'm a linesman and if I'm making money, I'm recycling that back into the economy somewhere. But it is a financial loss for the utility, which reduces electricity supply. So I seriously think that since democracy is a value, it's a value which the bank values, you have to bring in over there the social benefit of democracy. Because it's only really, an authoritarian regime. You yourself mentioned one of the problems is poor governance and state-owned utilities. So what about the benefits of democracy? Where does it play in the social cost benefit model?
Should I take several or just one each?
Yeah, let's collect the questions.
On the distortions in India, I quote from here that the present system of free or subsidized electricity in agriculture, the result is the world's largest user of groundwater is India, and which is a non-renewable source of energy. And with the present consumption increasing, it has increased 700% from 1950 to 2014. Now my question is this: when the world is talking of impending water shortage all over the world, this type of depletion of the underground water, does it constitute a red flag for us for the long-term future? And if so, is there not a need to regulate the use of underground water? Thank you.
As a way forward or a solution to the current need gaps that we have, along with renewables, I would like to know the panel's view on techno-commercial feasibility on having more reliance and shift towards nuclear power space for mainstream grid-based consumption.
One is for Dr. Fan. Although my question is not directly related to the main theme of the report, will she tell us something about the Chinese experience? How has China avoided the traps of the distortions we have talked about? Second is to Mr. Shahi. He has been on both sides of the debate. He has been in the government, now he is outside the government. Can't the bureaucrats in India tell the political masters that, look, if we follow wrong policies, this is going to lead to disaster? Do they tell them, or they don't have the courage to tell them, to political leaders?
Excuse me. Mahendra Delhi industry, I think 4% GDP economic distortions and $86 billion, this is really strange enough. I think these were the subjects of 1950s, 60s, 70s. Now India calls itself as an emerging nation. And it has already emerged. It is going to be the power of hyper middle income country. The question remains the same, that as Professor Shahi, I think, concludes very nicely, that political economy dominates everything. Whatever the technical, suggestions are there, ultimately we have to be dominated by the political economy. I must appreciate his suggestions, I think. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Abhishek. My question is, do the democratic politics, like of India, with growth of populism all over the world, be it in US, France, or in India, come at crossroads with the long-term policy makings or policy reforms, with the government being elected only for 5 years, but the policy cannot be made only for 5 years. Right? Do the policy reforms and the government come at crossroads? Thank you.
Hello, Ek Jain. My question is to Fan. Very good report produced. My basic question is, the report has cited most of the statistics up to 2015, somewhere 2016, so somewhere 2013. And in the last 3 years, there has been a major departure from the previous state of power in India. So whether the report will need updation. And second is the objection about the strong word distortions, whether this can be replaced by deficiencies. Thank you.
So let me start from the last question. Yes, I think one of the panelists also mentioned that the data some of the data are used in the past. Yes, because those are the data we used are the most recent available data at the time of the analysis. So we do realize that with power shortages declined and more people being connected to the grid over the past few years, at least the calculation on the part of the opportunity cost of lack of reliable access to electricity would be lower today than in fiscal year 2016. But on the other hand, the environmental and the health cost due to coal power plants could have gone up because of the increase in population and more people that are being affected by air pollution. Can I ask you to repeat the second part of your question? Yes.
The second part is that distortion seems to be a very judgmental word. Can it be replaced by deficiency?
Oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, in the report we define distortion. We divide distortion being a three-part: institutional distortion, regulatory distortion, and social distortion. Some of these are due to inefficiencies in operation, in generation transmission. Some of these are due to this environmental and social externalities associated with coal consumption. I think there are several questions about political economy of reform. One question about how the rise of populism affect the reform. One about how do I see the democracy. Unfortunately, in this report, we did not analyze the political economy angle of reform. We want to point out that there is huge inefficiencies and distortions in the system, so there is a large opportunity to remove these distortions so that India can make the best use of existing facilities, avoiding waste, attracting private investment, and accelerating the transition to a more cleaner energy. And the reform will not be easy, and it may take time because it requires behavior change. It requires providing right incentive at the right place. But the important thing is that we have to start the reform. And the reform has to be comprehensive because the distortions are at every stage of a power supply. And without a comprehensive reform that addressing distortions at the same time, there could be unintended consequences. So for example, if we only improving the efficiency of coal supply without addressing the externalities of coal consumption, that would lead to higher environmental and health damages. And therefore, there has to be as many policies as there are distortions. And this also relates back to the question of our subsidies. Subsidies as a way to protect poor households, but there are many ways to provide social assistance. and we should not introduce one distortion to replace another distortion. And there's a question about the experience of China, so I have to admit that even though I'm originally from China, but I haven't done any analysis on the Chinese power market, so cannot help you to address that question. But before I joined the South Asia region, I also worked on Eastern Europe and the Central Asia region of the World Bank. So one of the countries I worked on is Turkey. Turkey is a country that also had a lot of problem in their energy supply in the early 2000s. But the country has embarked a very comprehensive and ambitious power sector reform by opening up the market for private players, introducing competition, and that have attracted a lot of private investors on renewable energy, and that has also helped bring down the cost of the electricity because renewable energy turns out to be less costly than gas-based power generation. And Turkey also has a huge distribution losses because of a theft, but the country was able to reverse the trend by privatizing the distribution utilities. So I think that offers an example of how to implement power sector reform. And I think the World Bank has a report that describing the experience of Turkey. Yeah, so the question of energy security, I also completely agree that energy security is very important. And I think by improving efficiency so that the power plants can produce more electricity with the same amount of coal, and that will help to improve energy security because the coal that has been saved can be used to produce more electricity. And that will reduce coal shortages and improving electricity supply. Did I miss any questions? I think I answered all the questions. Oh yeah. The groundwater, yes. I think that's a serious problem by this depletion, overconsumption of groundwater is not optimal because we know that a lot of people in rural and in urban area that relies on groundwater as their drinking water. And a lot of food production, irrigation also requires groundwater. So there's an optimal path about how to utilize these non-renewable resources. If we use them too quickly, too fast, you will run out these non-renewable resources. And that will have serious impact on long-term food and water security. So how to address this issue? I think electricity price reform is just one piece of the puzzle. There needs to be other more holistic action and policies taking place, like in the water market. Water needs to be properly priced. And the farmers should also be provided with alternative source of water. And the water that the farmers should be given knowledge about how to conserve water. And there also should be reforming the agriculture market in terms of how to induce a more balanced selection of the types of crop that the farmers choose to produce.
More adoption to that.
The report did not discuss specifically about food mix. The broad point I want to make is that when you do the system planning or least cost planning, you have to take into account not just the production cost of power, but also the social cost, the hidden cost of health and the environmental damages connected to energy production. We know that India already has a very serious air pollution issues. The PM 2.5 is a very small particles you cannot see, but it's very dangerous for health. It's only 1/30 the width of a human hair, but it can break into lung barrier, can be deeply inhaled into lungs and enter into bloodstream and causing serious health issues. It's not just the a death problem that we mentioned, the coal power plants that contribute to more than 82,000 deaths a year in India. But it's also about illness, disability associated with air pollution. Another statistic that's presented in the report is that the loss of healthy life is 2.3 million years because of the air pollution from coal power plants. So this is we cannot see air pollution. It's hidden, but it's everywhere, and it cannot be further ignored. So doing this least cost planning, we have to take into account the social cost as well.
I'm Sudhir K. Jain, IIT Delhi, Management Department. I find in your India's study, you have taken in different charts and tables, figures, different years database. For example, in figure 4.2, it is 1971 to 2015. In 4.4, 1997. In 4.6, 1991. In some, it is 1972, like daily power shortage, etc. In terms of the shortage of, I think this is the percentage of thermal power. See, what happens if you had taken the same database, the picture would have been more clear. You probably have not gone through the era of 1970s, from 1972 for about 25 years. There was power shortage to the extent that there is a forced power cut at the domestic level of about 10 hours per day, off and on, and in the industry it was 22 hours power cut. In 1970s, the industrial sector was given power only for 4 hours or 3 hours, and that was any time in the day. So 24 hours, the workers had to be there. The shift could work only 3 hours, which they did not know when it will come. And the scenario was very bad. So if the thermal power has been increased, you have shown in this figure 4.2 from 1971 thermal power share. So this is something which was absolutely needed because say the private sector cannot go for hydropower, very difficult. So private sector can't go for nuclear power. So the thermal power which has increased through the private sector power generation, that is because the country had undergone a very, very severe, difficult phase for about 25 years. Even in Delhi, even in IIT Delhi, we had 10 hours of power cut officially in the mid-90s. This was a very serious situation, and if the thermal power has gone up, you have shown only this aspect, the social aspect, diseases, pollution, etc. But in 1970s, the hospital, the emergency ward, the operation theater would not have a regular power. What happens if the power goes off? We had, China made small lights were there, which emergency lights. We used to use those things up to 1990s, mid-90s. In 1971, that was not there. So I think it requires some kind of correction. Your study with the same database. Thank you very much.
So when we calculate the benefits of imposing a full environmental tax, and we show that there will be net benefits of $35 billion a year. So how do we come up with that number? We actually consider 3 parts of the welfare. One is the avoided environmental and social benefits, environmental and health benefits. The second is the tax revenue. And the third is the consumer and the producer surplus change. And the third part, I think, that relates to your point. Yes, it's true that with the increase in coal price, the consumption of coal would decline, and that would also relate to a decline in electricity supply. So we did consider into that part of impact on the society, on the welfare. But even after we incorporate that into the analysis, there is still significant welfare again, just because the health and environmental damages are so big, and also because there will be a significant increase in tax revenue, which if invested wisely, that would contribute to a long-term economic growth for the country, and could also even maybe used for developing other cleaner energy that you can both provide electricity but without the negative impact from emissions.
Sorry, we've I think exceeded our timeline by I think more than half an hour. So if I could just interrupt anybody who wanted to ask a question to please find Professor Fan and the panelists later on during lunch and ask their questions. So just to wind up things a bit faster, can I just open the floor and give the mic to my fellow panelists if they want to add in or make a comment?
One comment from one of the distinguished audience members. How do we prevail upon democratic system to change the policy? It takes time, it's a struggle. Managing change and our electricity legislation is one of the good examples of what a great struggle it required. Because here because it's a concurrent subject, and from 1901, we had to repeal that act, Electricity Act, and then we had to repeal the 1948 Electricity Supply Act, and the states had the dominant role in power sector. So dominant role in power sector being given to states, provincial governments, and then to formulate this legislation itself, it was a great challenge. So I wouldn't say that we should be frustrated. We can't be very optimistic that such great changes happen just easily. And where we are stuck up, as I made the point, that this is a complex issue. We cannot pin down to one issue and solve that. But I would say that if two issues are solved, and which are difficult, many other things will fall in place perhaps. Generation has fallen in place, transmission by and large has fallen in place. My own belief is that retail business in electricity cannot be done with state governments, organizations. I keep saying that electricity now is the only commodity, even foodstuff. Finally, when it is distributed through PDS, you get the private entities into picture. This cannot be done. So maybe at feeder level, maybe at substations level, maybe at distribution transformer level, we have to get the private entity engaged in this. I struggle on two privatization, Orissa privatization and Delhi privatization. One has worked, Orissa did not work. So we have to see how best we do. Franchisee is the second best option. Unless in power sector we fix distribution, I don't think anything else will work. Definite. How soon we fix and how long it will take to prevail upon political economy and masters of political economy and our political systems. But I don't think we can give up. That is one. On fuel, it has taken 20 years. There is a 20 years lag from power sector reform. And I think the legislation is in place. And I have the information that, though again late in implementation, so it will happen. So you have competition in fuel, then you will have the issue of competitive prices. You do have competitive prices in power today. You do. Though cost plus tariff continues, as Mr. Bajaj said, but cost plus tariff was a passing phase. 62 we did not remove, but 63, section 63, that powers purchased by distribution company will have to be on competitive basis, exists and very much obligatory. So I think these two things if we fix, as I said, it is not very simple. But one more point that I would like to struggle on, cost of democratic value or price of democratic value. Now there is a fine point. I agree that if the power is taken at low cost, at no cost, something happens in the economy. But does it lead to wasteful consumption? It does. So to that extent, we have to be careful on that point. It does, because we were making a point in when Andhra Pradesh did this, and I asked the Chief Minister, the then late Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, and then you have made it free for everybody, or water table, what happens to water? And he had no answer. So therefore, if it is free, then it will be used like that. So I think, I myself said that in a democratic system, we cannot totally wish away the requirements and the considerations that go in the political arrangement, but at the same time, second best perhaps can be definitely attempted. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll conclude now. Unless until you want to say something? No, okay, okay, so we'll conclude. Let me conclude by thanking everybody who was there today. So we've had an excellent morning of a very enriching discussion. So according to their order of appearance, if I could say, I would like to thank Professor Hoda, Professor Fan, definitely, the excellent panelists that we have here, Mr. Shahi, Mr. Bajaj, Dr. Ritu Mathur, Dr. Vaibhav Chaturvedi, as well as the World Bank Group in general for producing such excellent result and supporting this event, as well as the ICRIER team that helped manage this event. So I would want to thank Mr. Manmeet ji, Neha, Krishan, Rajkumar, Sharad, Rajesh, Uma, as well as Sejal, who helped from the research team, helped manage this event. Thanks a lot, and please proceed to lunch. Thank you.